Welcome back to another week of the Transformation Leaders podcast. Sean Ennis. I'm joined here today with my partner in crime, David Soden, as we're talking about a really interesting utility, tool, library, whatever you call it, that will help you understand your large language model usage. And I've seen this in action before. There are so many uses for this. We really want to bring this to your all attention on what you can do with this capability. A lot of the transformation projects we're talking about include AI. So understanding your AI usage, controlling your AI usage may very well be a key part of making you look good in front of your management. So today we'll be talking about LightLLM. And David, please walk us through, educate us, make sure everybody knows what we can do with this awesome utility.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I appreciate it. So we definitely have an action-packed show for you today. And I want to bring this LLM Light application to the forefront of a lot of developers as well as senior leadership at companies, because there's a little bit of something in here for everybody. So whether you are an owner or you're a developer or you're just senior leadership in a very large organization, the key takeaway here is there's a better way, there's a more efficient way. And this is like drinking from the fire hose, because every day there's something new in agentic AI or AI that comes out. And this has actually been out for a little while. So to kind of cut to the chase real quick, because everybody's going to want to know, okay, this is great, but in the back of your mind, I know everybody's thinking, how much is this going to cost me? So first of all, the good news about a lot of these tools, and this is one of these companies, it's absolutely free to use. I'm going to show you everything that you can do today for free. When I say for free, the code base is free. You still have to host it. And so whether you're using the plethora of places that you can go out there and host this through, which I think they had a couple of different subscribers out there. But in any event, I know Amazon is a preferred vendor for these folks on the enterprise plan. So the pricing is very simple. It gets to open source is zero cost. And then enterprise, it's kind of like the lobster at Red Lobster. If you have to ask how much it is, then you can't afford it. So the thing is probably the same here. I was able to get pricing from Amazon when I logged into my Amazon account and tried to, use one of their AMIs, and it's 30 grand on Amazon. Now, whether you get a hold of them, I don't know if you can negotiate a better deal or whatever. Maybe it's 25-ish or something. But if you go to the enterprise route, and I'll make call outs what is kind of an enterprise thing, but you get a lot for free. And this is what I kind of want to walk you through and show you today. So before I get into that, let's talk about some of the features. Again, some of these are for your developers. Some of these are for senior leadership and or business owners. And so the first thing you want to do is you want to track spending. Now, how might you do that, or why would you do that? Because maybe in a department, you're using these applications, or there's applications being developed with all this low code, no code stuff. Everybody can make an app now, even my grandfather, right? And so the point here is that with all these applications, with all these large language models, everybody needs an API key to turn on that functionality to get you where you need to be. And in order to do that, there's costs that go assigned to that. So eventually, when you interact with this, it racks up a bill. Usually, they're very small. For a lot of the even development stuff, I'm lucky if I spend $5 a month at best, just playing around and developing stuff. So in a production use case, I think 100-ish for most companies is probably reasonable. Larger enterprises, maybe under 500-ish, unless you're just hammering the heck out of this thing. But in any event, the point is you want to have these cost controls, these costs back, and you want to assign it to a department. Maybe your product goes out to customers. And if those products go out to customers, you want to be able to track how much it is that they're spending. Maybe you don't want to put a token limit on what it is that they're offering. Maybe you just want to say, hey, listen, here's the price per token, and we're going to charge you usage every month with your credit card on file, much like every other SaaS-based company does. And so by limiting by tokens and then having the customer to reach out, it's just a bad customer experience, because the thing has to break first and then the customer has to do whatever. And God forbid their customers or your customer then has customers of theirs, and that thing breaks in the middle. It's just a real sloppy way of doing it. Okay. The other thing that it does, and this is a key part, and this is for the non-technical folks, maybe it's a little harder to wrap your head around. So OpenAI was the first on the scene at the end of 2022 with the GPT. I think they started with 3. And when they did that, they created this API for you to get artificial intelligence with. And they had not only the service, but you programmers would write code against it. And so every other compatible or every other second GPT-3X like application that has come out has followed the same programming standards, the same API calls. So when I need to, as a programmer, I'm going to switch over to something a little bit geeky right now, but here is what they call a payload when you're sending something to an API, right? And so the way that you specify now, this is something special called user. We'll get back to this guy in a moment, but just for simplicity, I'll go ahead and I'll delete it. And so this is a typical standard, an OpenAI standard. OpenAI does it, and anybody that is working doing generative AI, they have their own model. They set up their API to be OpenAI-like, and that term or that phrase, as I just mentioned it, is called over here, what they say OpenAI compatibility. And so this is where LightLLM comes in to save the day, because as long as your application only needs a single API key, I'll jump ahead a little bit to go to here. So I'm going to use N8N as an example, right? And so N8N, you go in here, you figure an API key, and this is where most applications stop right there. It's like, does it work with OpenAI? Yes. Can I put in my own API key? Yes. And so you do that. You go to OpenAI, you go on the back end, you generate an API key, and you plug it in. Well, where software companies are getting a little bit more modernized and ahead of the game is they're using this thing called a base URL in addition to an API key. And this opens the door for people to use, or customers to use, things like this LightLLM, where I can have multiple models behind the scenes that act like OpenAI. And as far as the application's concerned, it's ignorant. It doesn't know anything different. It says, oh, this is an OpenAI account, and it makes a call programmatically. It's written behind the scenes to know how to talk to OpenAI's API. And so it just does its thing. Now, the thing that makes the magic happen, though, is, and this is where a lot of companies both include and don't include this extra option called a base URL. And what this allows you to do is, this is the standard API where you go to interact with it online with OpenAI the way that it is, right? This is how you get there. But if you want to use something like this LightLLM, I can come here and take this, copy this URL out, and I can go back to this. I'll leave the V1 there, but I'm going to swap out this with this. Now, all of a sudden, yes, technically it's OpenAI compatible. The application in N8N is ignorant. It thinks it's talking to OpenAI. But what I did is I changed the base URL now to talk to this gateway, this middleman. And what it's going to do is it's going to facilitate communications with the back-end large language models, and it's going to talk to them. It's going to interact with them. And the application, as far as it's concerned, it's just going to continue to go along and sync and do its job and work. And so nobody is none the wiser. Behind the scenes, you can get information on a dashboard based on usage. You can see kind of which are the top models that are being used, what are the top keys. You can come over here to teams. Now I only have 2 teams, an unassigned team, which is a blip. And then I got a testing team, which has pretty much the majority of the work. And then behind the scenes, I have Grok, which is a third party, if you're not familiar with Grok. This is this super, super fast, lightning fast API that's out there. And it's really cool, but it uses an OpenAI compatible type of way of interacting with it. And so if you go into the dev console behind the scenes of this Grok, you can see that there are a bunch of different models. You got Llama 4, you got Gwen, you got this Whisper, Llama 4, blah, blah. Anyway, point is, the cloud is the limits. And then what you do is you configure, sorry about bouncing around here, guys. You configure your Grok PQ as one of the OpenAI compatible models in there behind the scenes. And again, that N8N thinks it's talking to OpenAI, but I can configure it in such a way or set up a key in such a way or a model in such a way that I can get, and you have all those options, by the way, to be able to simply at will configure this huge, large backend. So this is literally OpenAI, even though you're using the gateway to get to it. Sounds kind of counterintuitive, like why would I do that? It's because of those benefits, those features, the cost control. So GPT-4, GPT 4.0, but then I have this local host Llama. Now on my personal machine, I am running a Llama. Give me just a quick second here to bring over my screen. And I'll just do a Llama list. I know this is kind of geeky for some of you, but I'm in a command line and that's the way that it is. There's no user interface to it. But these are the models, these 4 models that I have behind the scenes. So even though I'm talking to this one layer, which is the second layer, because it's, again, the LightLLM, the application, the end user application, like I showed you the N8N earlier, which is this. Once this is configured in this way, in my application, I can choose the model Llama, and I can then access anything else behind that scene. So the point here is, or the takeaway is that as new technology comes on board, as things become cheaper, better, easier to use, you want to have the ability to use this technology like this gateway so that I'm going to show you a bad implementation. If you're a developer and you're writing your software like this, stop, please stop. It's creating so much more code for you to manage. You don't need to do this anymore with these types of gateway technologies. They have OpenAI, they have Grok, they have Anthropic. All of these, by the way, are, if you look at their API calls, are identical or AI compatible. Wouldn't it be just better to maintain one of these and just move forward with it and not have to look at all the ones that are configurable here? This is crazy. And so that poor developer then has to maintain each of those configurations, more to go wrong, more bugs. It raises the cost of those applications. So again, the takeaway here is twofold then. If you're developing your applications like that, again, please stop, because you no longer have to do that with using these types of supplemental technologies. It really, really helps lower the cost of ownership for your applications, whether they're SaaS, whether they're just used internally, or whatever the case may be, even with the vibe programming that we showed you in last week's show. That, yes, it's much easier to do these things now, but the question is why? Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And so that's what kind of the takeaways. I'm going to pause here, Sean, because I want you to kind of take a few minutes, ask some questions, or let's kind of recap or summarize, because I went through a lot of information here, and then we can get into more of the technical demo.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think you did a great job of educating everybody of the different operational and business use cases for this technology. Having a middleware in the middle to manage and monitor usage is very important. You don't want people using them for their own purposes. You don't want them to be doing things like vibe programming and their marketing people, right? You want to understand what people are using things for. Many reasons for this, the chief of which, and I don't think we've talked about this before, but when it comes down to you're trying to convince your management to give you hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars maybe, that you're going to save money with large language models, you're going to need to provide a report on what the ROI is. So this tool gives you that usage, gives you that understanding, where you can go through and use this data to explain who's getting value where, and then you could do calculations to give a high level estimation, or what I like to call it, a guesstimation, on what value you're actually generating every time someone uses it. And here's the most important part. Large language models, or GenAI in general, do not generate value unless they're being used. So consumption will point you to ROI, which keeps you employed. So want to be careful in understanding there are very valid reasons beyond the technical to include this. But I think the next step you're going to be talking through are the technical things. So, there's plenty of reasons to use this technology. Technical reasons, business reasons, operational reasons, functional reasons.
Yep.
So that's why we felt it so important to talk about this today.
Yeah, and so now as we move through the demo, but going back to a lot of what Sean said, there is another key compelling reason from the business side. And I want to take a small segue, because I would be remiss to not mention this, is that governance and compliance is super important. We talk about ethical AI and all kinds of things in between, but being able to understand what's going on with ease, because even though people say, oh yeah, we've got governance, we got compliance, it's a bunch of manual processes, unfortunately, from what Sean and I have seen. And it takes a tremendous amount of human effort, and humans can't necessarily keep up with the technology. But there's technology for this, LLM, LightLLM, and I'm going to show you a quick integration. Under this logging and alerts, a seemingly innocent link, you have the opportunity to add what's called callback logging. Now, here are the opportunities for you to do these types of logging. So I'm going to show you one of the ways, which is LangFuse today. But I want you to keep an open mind that you could use OpenTelemetry, S3 buckets, which means maybe you do have a programmatic manual process that you do, meaning that you wrote something custom or specific, and all you want is the telemetry, the output, which you could go to OpenTelemetry just to get the telemetry as it comes across the line and take care of it in real time, much like the services Kinesis on AWS, and I forget what they call it on Azure right now. But in any event, the point here is you can store them as files, you can store them as feedback like Kinesis does. There's all these other ones. Honestly, I don't know what OpenMeter is, and some of these other ones. Langsmith I'm familiar with. But in any event, the point is I'm going to show you LangFuse today. And you might be like, okay, well, what's this all about? Okay, so this dizzying, very super geeky dashboard is doing a whole bunch of things for you. It is giving you what you received inside of this usage report here, but it gives it to you at the next level. You do get monthly spend information here, so you can kind of see the monthly spend. You can see what's going on over here. You can get the customer usage over here, as well as your team-based usage, and there are cost dollars associated with that, and you are seeing it. Now, I did tell you I was going to call out enterprise features. This tag-based operation usage, in order to get access to this, you do have to upgrade to the enterprise plan. That's that $30,000 price tag minimal, at least I'll call it that. I've never talked to these folks. I don't know what the pricing is if you were to go direct, but again, from AWS, you can light it up there and it says 30,000. Now, what this allows you to do is a trick like this. See where I have user and I'm passing this into the payload? I could do something like tag. And I don't know exactly how it works, but maybe you can put like a list or an array of tags where they're comma separated value or whatever, like tag 1. And then you come over here and add tag 2. So why is this all important? Well, I don't know. That's going to depend on your use case. And you know what that use case is, but you need to have the ability to do that. So if you need that ability, you will have to upgrade to the enterprise plan. $30,000 for a large enterprise, that may be a drop in the bucket, but the value that you get out of that to be able to drill down and filter, especially when you have to bill accordingly. A good use case, I spent I don't know, 16, 18 years in legal and law firms. And so this is a great use case for that, where internally you have practice areas of law. You have trust, wills, estates, you have litigation, you have blah, 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 all these different things inside of a law firm. And so inside of the law firm, as you pick up customers, clients, they have these suits, lawsuits, or whatever you're doing for them. They're called cases. So you have client matter. And so that information is tracked. This is where metadata like client and matter is extremely important. And knowing that these people make hundreds of millions and billions of dollars a year, $30,000 price tag is nothing to be able to have that level of control. So there's a good use case of how or why you might want to use that if you're an enterprise to consider the upgrade plan. All right, so super long digression. Apologies for that. Back to Lang.
Hold on. We have a question.
Okay.
Do you know if Copilot if this can be put between Copilot and Azure?
Yes.
You can do that. Okay.
You can do that. You can do that. There is a Copilot backend that allows you to connect to a RESTful API. You can also redirect that based on a topic that you set to a RESTful call. And a couple of different interesting use cases, like you could use the API component to talk directly to it. And you could even go an even longer, more expensive route. I'm just letting you know what's technically possible, because you can integrate Power Automate in with Copilot, and then Power Automate can facilitate that call. And the reason you might want to go the long route, it's kind of ridiculous. If you wanted to go from New York to, say, Beijing, China, you normally would just go from East Coast, West Coast and make the hop, versus maybe going over to Russia and Arctic and whatever. So the reason you would go the long route is that in addition to doing everything else, maybe there's a bunch of additional steps in the automation that you might want to handle. You could even throw it out to N8N and then have that layers and layers. But you know, if you have a specific use case, reach out to Sean and I on LinkedIn. We're more than happy to have.
Thanks again for the questions. You know, please send them in as we're talking. It makes this a lot more valuable to the audience, because it's just me and David sometimes. So when it comes to our question, they may be kind of slanted. Really appreciate it if you all, again, put in the comments, put in the questions. Sorry, David. No. I thought it was a good question to ask.
It was a great question. Yeah, and thank you. And more importantly, we're here for you guys. So as you have the questions, we definitely encourage you. And even if you're watching the show after the live, go ahead and put the comments in where you're seeing the stream or the live recording, or what did I call it? The after show or whatever, the actual recording after the fact. Just leave a comment down there and we'll circle back and answer those questions as they come up. Okay, so Lang Fuse, and we talked about governance. You get all your cost measures that you're seeing here. You can see the different models, how many tokens, what the dollar amount cost was funny. And this is funny because Llama is open source. There is no service charge other than the computer to host it. But if you were to, say, need to charge this back, you can still use this as consumption. Customer facing, I don't know that you'd want to use it internally, but that's entirely up to you if you want to do that. You get all these cost controls, but here's the governance. There's a couple things to note and locate here. We have this thing called tracing or traces. So I'm going to click on this trace, and you can see all of the different messages and answers that came across the line. So this is Big Brother in its finest, because it's watching everything. And there's a reason for it, because if you need to prove something legally down the road or compliance and governance, you need to do this. So in addition to this, if I click on any one, I can say, hey, tell me a cat joke. This was, and you can see this was from the user, and you can see how the AI responded. This is good for a multitude of reasons. I'm only going to give you a small hand case or use cases of whatever. Maybe something came across the line. Maybe a user isn't interacting in a conversational capacity. Maybe this is agentic AI. Maybe agentic AI went off the rails and it leaked some PII, or it did some whatever. If you're in SOX, if you're in HIPAA, if you're in whatever standard or governance model that you have to follow, you're going to need this level of granularity to find out what's going on. In addition to that, I can see all of the latency information. I can see how long something took, how the breakdown, any type of, I think I'm in the wrong area for this. I was looking, here it is, timeline. This will let you know how long something took to process. And if you had sequential with waterfalling, cascading queries coming out of this, you would see this go down, down, down. And then you'd get a full on look at how long something took. So besides governance and compliance, it can be used in technical capacities, QAing, troubleshooting, to figure out why a query did what it needed to do. And you need a little bit more visibility down deeper under the hood. And so the observation does something very, very similar. You can have traplets. So for those of you that have used enterprise level Splunk and the other type of analytical and data tracking programs and systems, this will probably be like, ooh, you're going like, oh, I got a bunch of stuff that we can do for this. So the point here is you're probably looking at these columns to find out what data comes across the line and what metadata. And I'm not going to go through each and every one of them. I'm just going to slide over so you can kind of see what's available to you. And some of these do expand out, such as the metadata, where you get a lot of more specific information. This is where I asked it to do something. And we're getting a bunch of additional telemetry up here. Down in there, you can get it in the raw format. It can get it in formatted as JSON and a bunch of other different things. So the key point here is LangFuse can very easily be connected. And again, I'm getting spun around. Sorry about this. Can be very easy connected by simply just adding callback, choosing LangFuse, typing in your public key or your whatever key. And it's really easy to do when you set up a project. Then you can get to those two keys that are there. And that's the integration. And if you do it successfully, you can push the callback button and you'll get this little pop-up that lets you know that everything's hunky-dory and things are working good. Now, in addition to that, you can set up traps natively internally to itself. So if you have Slack, unfortunately, if you're using Teams or some other tool, this won't work, but it won't take long to just set up a Slack, and then through other automation and integrations, you can wire Slack to other things as well. There's other types of alert settings that you can configure, and you also have the ability to do SMTP email alerts and other things, which if you did the other automation, then you can link this to Twilio. You'll get text messages, all types of different things that you want to do. Anyway, in addition to that, the other thing I want to touch base on, this is an enterprise feature, but caching is going to be super helpful. If I asked, what's the weather today? And Sean goes in, I don't know, within X number of minutes period or whatever, and Sean asks, what's the weather today? And it knows that we're in the same area, or it's a similar query, and it's going to produce a similar response. It can leverage caching requests, and they are configurable. All of this information is available in their documentation. It's very geeky. It talks a lot about the configuration stuff that you need to do in JSON, but trying to keep this a little bit higher level in that the configuration, the key takeaway from this is that cost savings. So you don't have to hit the LLM that you're paying for these repetitive costs. You can just pull it in from cache. There are ways of clearing the cache. I will make a call out. I've gone through the documentation, and you can do all of this programmatically. You can configure the cache in some regards. You can reset it. You can do different things with the cache, all programmatically, all through their backend API system. Very, very helpful. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to show you this side right here. If I start to collapse up some of these, a lot of these are for developers to write against this model. Now, some of these models you'll recognize as AI compatible, like chat completions. This is an OpenAI model, as is completion, embedding, images, audio assistant, moderations. And then we start getting into some deviations like batch, rank, fine tunings is an OpenAI. Vertex, this is different, right? This has nothing to do with API, OpenAI, but These right here are pass-through. These are configuring your gateways, different types of things that you can do up above and beyond just simply putting multiple LLMs through the back end. And somewhere down here is our caching. Here's the LangFuse stuff. But these are things that you can use LLM Light or LightLLM rather to interact with. Here's the key management for generating API keys. So I'm going to show you this in just a few moments. But somewhere down here is the caching. Here we go. So we can see if caching's working. We can delete a particular cache. If you're having your cache configured in Redis, there is a very specific Redis info that you can do. And this is where you can flush all of the cache as well. So programmatically, you can handle a lot of this. And then going back up to customer management, you can add customers, update them, delete them, list them, things of that nature, as well as teams. Now, all of this is internal to the operation to itself. And this is the user interface manual. So if I come over here, not to usage, sorry, I was looking for users, internal users. So here is where I added myself. You can add other people. You give people access to certain keys. You can have these people be part of a team. I created a test team. And so in that team, I can also have members associated with that. But more importantly, that team can get access to different models that I allow. And then when you go through configuring a new key, here's a key that's already left. I put a $5 spend limit on this one particular key, and I can see what this key is good for. But if I create a new key, here are your options. So I go ahead and give it a name of test demo. The next thing I do is try to figure out, hey, what does this, I'm creating an API key. This is literally like going to OpenAI and saying, generate an API key. And so I'm doing the same thing here. I'm saying, which models can they have? So maybe people only have access to this Grok P, and that's all I want to give them. Now, additionally, I can set a max budget. I can reset a budget on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. So that $5 configuration that you saw, max budget over here, which is behind the scenes, I could set this that it can only go $5 a day, or a week, or a month, or whatever. And so it just auto kind of updates or clears itself to do whatever, and it allows limiting. You can also do some throttling, which isn't available in this particular user interface, but I can say when the key dies, I lied. Here's the throttling request here of how much I can do per minute, requests per minute. And so I can also limit the amount of tokens that can be gobbled up in a particular time. This also helps any type of leakage or overabundance. If you have if you're a programmer, you'll understand this concept of called an infinite loop. So if you're in an infinite loop and it's making repetitive calls, pinging and hitting and running up the bill on this meter of this API, that throttle will help reduce that large inflated bill in the event that you programmed in, unfortunately, an infinite loop and didn't catch it. And you'd run up a big bill accordingly. So this is really good to set up, especially for a Q&A or QA key inside of your business, so that if you do encounter these rogue weird bugs, that if something bad were to happen, it doesn't cost your company a lot of money. So a lot of different strategy to use here in its implementation of that. Now, you don't have any of these controls with OpenAI directly. So again, not only can you use other models besides OpenAI, but you can use it to supplement the shortcomings or the shortfalls of the existing OpenAI feature set that they may not have certain things in place for. So with that being said, I'm going to pause here one more time. The next thing I'm going to do is light up a Docker container. It's called OpenWebUI. It'll provide a chat user interface. I'm going to show you how you can connect that to something like this and some of the cool features that's in there in case you have some sort of generative AI tool inside of your organization, or maybe even want to light something like this up for your org. Sean, anything to add before I move on to the next stage?
No, I mean, again, I think you've done a good job explaining this. The technical aspect of this. It is valuable from a metrics perspective. That's what sells me, is the metric side of things. And I say this all the time. I've probably said it 4 or 5 times on this podcast. Right now, the stability of LLM models as they are changing, as the feature sets are different from provider to provider, it is still the case. You should be dating your provider, not married to it. Right? And this gives you that extra amount of distance to be able to switch out without greatly impacting your teams. So, just another aspect of this. I mean, I would love people to chime in and tell me, where they see value in this, right? So thanks, Howie, for the comment. Again, please, everybody, feel free to reach out to us. A lot of this stuff we are learning ourselves. And I think, David, you learned about this less than a week ago and you fell in love with it that quick. And so, there is things that are constantly bubbling up to the surface. And we try to keep the pulse on it. But if we have missed something, we also want to hear that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're happy to dive deep into it and figure it out and learn it and then be able to present it and share it with other people, because it's really what our show's about, is sharing information and strategy and leadership and technology in this space for sure.
So, to the row, we've made you talk a lot, David. So hopefully we can give you a breather in the future.
No, it sounds good. These demos are nice and long, but usually the demo gods are bad. So I'm not going to curse anything. Maybe things will continue to run smoothly. I'm surprised it's gone as smoothly as it has, because there's always a glitch in it somewhere, or a ghost in the machine. All right. So before I set this up, this is probably really geeky, especially for a lot of you. And it's very specialized, but in today's day and age, and I'm going to disclaim this, but I also want to plant the seed for a lot of people out there looking, because again, what our show talks about, if you're dealing with generative AI or AI in general, your company doesn't want to be, I'm going to borrow Sean, you made a great comment earlier. You had said you don't want to be marrying any particular technology. You want to kind of date it. And Docker containers allows you to date the technology. So if you don't like the place that you're dating, such as Amazon or Google or whatever your hosting cloud provider is, you can take your ball and go home with it. And so that's what this allows you to do. Your app, your infrastructure as code, and that's what you're seeing here. Infrastructure as code. I've got something set up. It's already taken care of. It's already in the can. It's ready to go. And so I'm pulling it from a repo. It's sitting up there, and it's good to go. Now, I did download this image already. All I'm doing is, I want to use the geeky word, instantiate. I'm creating another container from this image. And what I'm saying is I needed to go on this port called 89990, because I'm running this on my machine, hence the word Docker Desktop. If you are running this in Azure or AWS or Kubernetes, you'd be in your own type of thing. But the key here is you can light up these containers locally all day long. So I have to show you the magician under his sleeve here. I got no tricks. There's no container there. I don't have any volumes. I don't have any builds. The only thing I have is this whopping 13 gigabyte image that I didn't want to have you guys watch the paint dry. And so I went ahead and downloaded that earlier. Now, it's the same command. The way the command works is it says, do I have this image that you're asking me for? If yes, I'll use that. If not, I'll go and download it. So I'm going to hit enter, and I'm running a specialized version because I have a very beefy machine here, and I just want to kind of be fair so that you guys don't try to run this on your own machine here. But for a little bit of context, am I in the right area? Details, processes. No, I'm not in the right area. Anyway, I was going to show something. I've got 128 gigabytes of RAM on my machine. I have 14 terabytes of hard drive space across multitude of drives. and I'm running a NVIDIA 4090. So it is not the latest, used to be up until a couple of months ago, but it is a very big, beefy model, and I can hold large language models in my GPU up to 24 gigabytes because that's how much RAM I have available to it. And so I've gone ahead and I've run this. I'm going to go ahead and close this down. And now you'll see that I have a container and I have a volume. Now, a volume is a way of creating a disk outside of this Docker container so that I can destroy the container, and any data that I create in the container gets stored on an aside piece of data. It's a virtual hard drive, a virtual disk. And so they're coupled together, but they're not intrinsically nested, or the volume isn't inside the computer. Like if you had a hard drive, you'd have to pull out your NVMe SSD or an old-fashioned spin hard drive. It's inside the computer, and that's the difference between these, right? They're not inside the machine. Okay, so I'm going to launch this user interface, and because I'm just getting started with it, I'm going to fill out some information to it, and I guess, yeah, that's fine because I'll trash the container after the fact. No, I don't want to remember it. Hopefully I won't lose my life on anything. Now, to be fair, what this is the Open Web UI. You can find it online. It's available to download and install. But more importantly, it's the model that specifically looks for a local instance of Ollama running. And I showed you that command earlier, what I had these 4 models that are down here. So I've got my Gwen. I got this law firm model. Now, this is a law firm model specifically trained on legal issues. I also have this Llama 2, and I have this embedding model that I have that's down here locally as well. Now, to connect OpenAI to this, in this case, I'm going to use the LightLLM because remember, I just need to have the endpoint and I need to have the key. So I'm going to come over here to settings. And then when I go over to settings, I'm going to come over here. Now I can go to connections here and I can manage it for myself. But what I want to do is I want to add it to the system. So I'm going to go on the system area. And then inside a system, I'm like another layer deep into this user interface. If I come over here to connections, you see that there's an OpenAI item over here. And then manage OpenAI connections. And see this little plus symbol? I can come over here and add a connection. Now, normally, if I come back over here to N8N, you would have this original, if you're connecting it really, I'm going to just close this, OpenAI. Normally, I need to use this if I wanted to really connect to OpenAI. And so I'm not doing that. I'm simply going and connecting the other way, which is over here. And so I'm going to put the base URL to my URL that has this right here, okay? This is this massive, large, huge user interface where I've got all of those other models connected. And then what I need to do is I need to provide an API key, which for this instance, this key was generated, and I'll go back over to LightLLM dashboard for virtual keys. That's this key that I'm going to use, specifically this one right here. And it's giving me access to the following models that you see listed over here. I'm going to pop that key into there. Now, if I click the little recycle thing, which would indicate maybe something else. Anyway, if I hover over it, it says verify connection. This is important because this is what you want to see. Server connection verified, and that means that it is working. Now, back out here in user interface experience land, instead of having the 4 models that are there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, got that. Should have seen a couple of other. I might have spoken too quick earlier by where's my other stuff? Yep, I did speak too quick. Okay, so those are the models that's showing. Connections, AI, Ollama, Zon. And by the way, this is where you can connect this interface to other models, but I'm trying to connect it over here. What if it didn't save out? Save. Yeah, okay, so something definitely went wrong here. Okay, URL. Okay, so that's my key. Go over here. I need this right here. And I need to do V1. Okay, hit save. Configure. Okay, yeah, that's all looking well and good. All right, here we go. There's Grok. Phew. All right. Anyway, so now I've got this back. So now I have the localhost Ollama. I now have the GPT 4.0, and I have this Grok. Now, here's something interesting about this. So Grok, let's go behind the scenes because I want to show this to you. In LightLLM, here's something else that I didn't talk about earlier, but this is a great segue into it. When I'm creating these keys, or more importantly, when I create the models. Now, you see I only have a couple of different models. Let's create a new model so that you can see what that user. Did you want to say something, Sean?
No.
Oh, okay. So when you go ahead and you create the models, the first thing you do is you pick the provider. So, we've been talking about OpenAI, but for what I'm showing right now, here's the Grok one. And so I can give it a name of whatever, right? Just fill it in, blah, 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 blah. But then what I can do is normally you would just pick a model and a name. And when you do that, it gives it a one-to-one pairing. So if I specifically wanted just this one, this Grok Llama 2 70B, I would choose that. And at this point, it's a one-to-one type of deal. No big deal. But if I choose a second one or multiples of second ones, then what happens is some interesting things begin to happen. It will do this routing magic. So behind the scenes, I'm going to come over here to router settings. It's set up for simple shuffle. What this means, and hopefully you have some context for this, but back in the day, especially if you know anything about networking and DNS specifically, there's this technique called round robin. And what that meant is that if I had an IP address for a particular computer name, that I could put IP address 1 and IP address 2, and one was a good one and one was maybe the backup. And they were on multiple different ways of getting to the same thing. Or I had two computers, both hosting the same website, both of those websites with a front end, but both of them may be tunneled back to one database, right? And so it was a poor man's load balancing way of doing it. A little bit of fault tolerance, not super, super great. But in this context here, it's large language models. And so I'm, in this user interface, I'm selecting this Grok P model. But behind the scenes in LLM, I have multiple of these set up. So you see how I have Grok P and both Grok there. Now I have this Llama 3 8B and I have a Llama 3 7B. And I can't choose the same model at the same time. That wouldn't make sense. But what I did do is choose a more intelligent, more expensive model to try to help load balance it. Now, the reason it's load balancing is because I have it set to simple shuffle. Which is the default. If I set it to usage-based routing or latency-based routing, then it would change its logic. So if it's saying usage-based, if I'm getting more usage on one than another, then it goes and tries to balance that out. On the latency-based, if one turns out that it's less performant, so if you've ever done a ping on a network to see if something's answering or alive, the millisecond response time could be 18 seconds for one and 320 milliseconds for the other. It's probably at the upper bounds of something that's acceptable. And so when you choose the latency, it's going to pick the model that's answering or is more performant. So more often than not always, because it depends on the infrastructure behind the model, but whatever model's not getting bogged down at the moment, it can set that up. So again, depending on how you have your global, and this is a global router setting, that's how these models will interact. And for this Grok P, which is the front end that you see that I've got listed up here at the top, that model behind the scenes is using these two models at the same time. So when I go hi to, that model, it's nice to meet you, but I wouldn't know what that is unless I went into Lang's, that Langsmith and Lang Fuse backend application, because I wouldn't see what's coming across. And so that's where helpful to have all of this stuff connected, because you can watch that telemetry come through. In addition to that, this is the user front end. But one of the nice things that you can do too is you can come back here to settings, again, go into admin settings and come in here to models. And I can change out this Grok P a little bit. And instead of it being Grok B or Grok P, I can call it medical. And you're like, what? What are you doing? Well, the reason for that is because even though this is a large language general model, I can now turn this into something extra. I can come down here to system prompt, and I can sit here and say, you are you're my medical doctor, and I'm just going to type because I can't talk and type at the same time.
I mean, this is a good point for me to chime in. I know we're running out of time, so I'm not going to comment too much here, but this is part and parcel of having a solution like this. If your team doesn't have a solution like this, you need to find a provider that can provide it. I know the company me and David work for offer things like this, so you should probably reach out. But there is a plethora of offerings out there. And we say this a lot, and I truly mean it. The technical side is not the gatekeeper, right? You want to partner up with people who understand the technology and how to apply it, because that is really the delimiter of business success today, is not the technology and which technology you use. It is all about how you use it.
All right, so I don't know if you were watching what I'm doing in addition to what Sean was saying, but the end result is this. I've converted this Grok P general model into now a medical type of large language model, or an agent. Now it is an agent, and this is really going along the lines of what's the difference between conversational AI, agentic AI, and what's an agent and stuff like that. An agent is a large language model that has been given guardrail. And you saw in a very short system prompt, I gave it a guardrail, told it it's a medical doctor. It only answers medical questions. If the user asks anything non-medical related, decline and redirect them. And so that's exactly what it's doing. I asked for the weather. And now I might ask, my back hurts. And it does. so sorry to hear that. And then it says, can you tell me more? So now it's trying to diagnose and triage whatever. But the point here is that we are able to use our local language model here within this chat user interface. I was able to also connect my local Olama host here that I have running on my own machine, even though that this is running in Azure. This server, this virtual Docker container is running in an Azure environment right now. And how did I connect my Azure environment to my local machine? I used Cloudflare, and I used a tunnel. You could have used any number. I think it's called ngrok. Everything's Grok apparently today. But you could use ngrok. That's paid for. Cloudflare tunnels are free. You can open, you don't open a port, but the tunnel creates the tunnel into it, and then you get a public URL. And with that public URL, then I'm able to connect my model on my own home machine into this cloud-based Azure platform. Anyway, we are definitely running out of time. I'm just going to leave it there. Sky is the limit. Surely I've made at least a good enough use case of why you might want to dig into this deeper, because the possibilities are almost endless, and it gets even better when you connect things like the Lang Fuse option for the governance telemetry. But if you have any questions, Sean and I can definitely help answer any of those for you. There's lots and lots of use cases. It seems like every day that comes up for one reason or another that you need to be using some sort of large language model in your business to help do whatever it is you're going to do, and you want to do it in a safe and responsible way. And today's show, hopefully we gave you a little insights on how you can accomplish something just like that. Sean, anything else to add?
No, really appreciate David taking us all through this wonderful aspect of things that we didn't even know existed 2 weeks ago. In the meantime, I want to call out all the people who commented today, all the people who asked questions today. Really appreciate your feedback. And, we have more guests that are planned this month and next. So please reach out to us. If you are a leader and you want to talk about some of the trials and tribulations you have in the innovation projects that you're doing. So, David, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, that sounds great. Just the same drill that we give you every week at the end of the show. We're here every Wednesday at 12 o'clock noon Eastern time, lunchtime for us, to give you the podcast. So if you have suggestions or comments on the shows, leave them in the comment box below the streaming video. Otherwise, hit us up on LinkedIn. And until next week, we'll see you later. Have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.